Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the HMIS Emergency Shelter Workflow Training. Today's webinar is for agencies who enter clients in emergency shelters, night-by-night shelters, and for DV programs. This webinar is also being recorded, so if you would like a copy, please let us know. Also, during the webinar, please feel free to ask any questions relating to today's training in the chat box. Thank you all for joining, and Lucia will be our presenter for today.
Thank you, Miriam. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, I'm going to go over our objectives for today. I'm going to go over logging in, the different workspaces, the menu navigation, the different workflows. This is going to be specific to shelters, all the assessments and how to edit and add assessments, how to record services, how to record case notes, and then we'll open it up for questions. Miriam will be going through the questions, so we'll take those at the end. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started on the home list database. We're going to also go over onto the DV site, but we're going to start with the home list site. Again, if you have any questions at any time, feel free to type it up in the chat box. Okay, so logging in, the live website URL is www.clienttrack.net/KTCOC. We will be going through the test site, so we won't be reviewing any real clients. All the information in the test site is not true client information. Okay. When you become an HMIS, a new HMIS user, you do have to fill out and sign an end user agreement. Once we receive that, we will be sending you via email your username and password. When you do log in for the first time, you will be asked to change your password. No one should have your password. It is a web-based database, so we do ask that you keep that to yourself. Do not share your password with anyone, and be very protective of it. Because it is web-based, we wouldn't want anyone to log on and kind of hijack or steal client-level information. So we're going to click on sign in. That's not my password, I guess. There we go. And we're going to jump over to the emergency shelter work group. Usually it doesn't take this long. Come on. Oh no. Let's try that again. Okay, there we go. Okay, when you do first log in, and it's the first time you're logging in, it's going to prompt you to change your password. So at that time, you'll enter a new password, and you'll have to enter it twice to confirm. Your information will come up on here. Again, today I'm Kelly Clarkson for this for the purpose of this training. You can add your picture to your user account. You can just go to your name here and click on change photo and upload your own photo. Okay, so that was the logging in. Now we're going to go over the workspaces. So we have a couple options. When you do log in, it's going to default to the client's dashboard. To go through your workspaces, you're going to click on this blue box here with the double arrows. That will open the carousel, and then you can select which workspace you'd like to work in. The home workspace has everything to do with your user account, your case assignments, your caseload. You can change your password off of this workspace, and then all the reports, all baseline and all the CAN reports, including the custom queries and Data Explorer, would be found on the Homes workspace. Also, as you can tell, you have a couple icons To the right of the box here, you have them on the home workspace as well as the client's workspace. These are shortcuts. So if you click, for example, if you want to go straight into the intake without having to go into the dashboard first, you can click on Shelter Intake here, and it'll take you straight to the intake as opposed to just the dashboard. Same with the Home tab. If you want to do the shelter check-in, you click on that icon, and it'll take you straight to that page. And we'll also go over the favorites, so it will add more icons here, which will make it even faster. All the icons in your favorites area would be next to each box here. Okay, we're going to go over the home workspace. Like I said, this includes all the reporting, all the reports. We got all your HMIS reports here. They have changed a few reports. We have the new exports, the 6.1 if you use that. We have the performance measures. You can run those for your agency at any time. Then we still have our standard reports, which are the clients and programs, a few of the demographics, employment income, services reports, and so on. Under the My Client Track menu, we have several options here. You can look at your current enrollments. You would select your program, and then these would all the clients that are in your program would come up here. You can click on these icons to go straight to that client record as opposed to going and searching that client there. And then you can record multiple services. A service to multiple clients by using this menu here. You would select your service and then your program enrollment, and all the clients that are enrolled into this project here, whichever program you select, will pull up here. It might be a few, it might be hundreds. If there's more than like 50 or so, you'll get a page pagination here, and you would just click next or last page or whatever to get you through all the clients. And then to simply record the service record, you would check off the box next to the client's name. You select the units. You can leave it as 1 or you can change that. Select their enrollment and then hit save and close. And then at this time, I'm also going to go over the quick client shelter check-in. So this is specific to the projects that record information for night by night. The difference between night by night and a regular emergency shelter is they have an open enrollment within HMIS, and they come in and check in on a nightly basis. Sometimes they're operated on a first come, first served. They don't keep an enrollment. It's not an entry versus exit. So a traditional shelter where they would have a program entry date, they just keep that enrollment open until the client actually exits the program, and it could go up to 90 days. A night-by-night shelter is based on bed nights service records, not entry and exit dates. So the quick client shelter check-in page here, you would go ahead and select, let me change my agency. Okay, you would select your facility that is within your organization. And then you get the list of all the clients that are enrolled in that program within this check-in date. And then it checks in a client 1 day only. So if you want to check them all, you'd click the box at the top here. If you want to just check a few, say that only Melissa and Gary came in for that specific night, and it, like I said, it only records them on a nightly basis. You would check the boxes next to their name, confirm that their enrollment is the correct enrollment, and then hit save and close. Once you hit save and close, those clients that you checked off will record a bed night for this night, and then you would keep doing that for every other night. So if you have a bed log for the whole month, you would do that for every day of the month. So this is the home workspace. Okay, so now we're going to jump over to the client's workspace. You're going to be, whenever you work with the client, regardless of what you need to do with the client. If it's enroll the client, exit the client, add services, add a case note, anything and everything that has to do with the client information, you would work off of the client's workspace. Okay. We're going to go ahead and go through the shelter intake. This intake is the same for all DV programs as well. So to do that, we're going to go to the shelter intake. We're going to go ahead and click add a new client. Let's see, this is probably the hardest part, is figuring out a name. I don't know. The first step is searching existing clients. So if it goes straight to the basic client information page, this is a 2-page process. It means that this client, at least with this name, is not in the system. However, if the client name matches another client that's already previously in the system, it will kind of give you an alert indicating that it could possibly be a duplicate client. I'll go ahead and enter this client. Again, we're looking for full social, or at least partial. That social security number is one of the highest data elements that go missing. Even if it's just one number out of the whole 9 digits, that won't count against us. Go ahead and enter a date of birth. I'll change this to full. Select their ethnicity. Race is a multi-field box, so you can select more than one here. And then you would select their gender. There's a few changes on the responses for gender. Now, in addition to male and female, they've changed the wording a little bit. Now we have trans female, male to female, and then trans male, female to male. And then we have gender non-conforming. And we still have the don't know, refuse, and data not collected. What did I name this person? Harry. That sounds like a male for me. Okay, and then select their veteran status, if they've served in the armed forces in the United States, and then you go ahead and click Finished. Okay, then the next page is the family members page. If the client has family but did not present the entire family with the head of household upon entry, you would not enter the family members. However, if, say for example, Harry Cooks came to the project with a child, you would enter that child's information here. So you check off the box, record the client's information all the way across, same information as the head of household. For the relationship to head of household, you would select from spouse, dependent child, daughter, son, other family member, or other non-family member. Sometimes it's a caretaker, sometimes it's another family member that's living with the head of household but is not a biological family member, so you can always select non-family member. It will not let you select 2 selves. So you would finish entering that all the way across. I'm going to uncheck that so I could save this. Next page is the program enrollment. It does kind of give you a few definitions for each project type. We're going to select, let's select a shelter, the Barbara Seville shelter. Okay, so sometimes there's family members that previously were with the head of household that may or may not have came with the client for this project stay, for the one you're entering. So they would be listed here. However, if they didn't present themselves for services for your project, you would only check off the ones that did. They would all be listed here, like I said. And so say that this client has a family of 5, but for some reason the rest of the family members are staying with friends or relatives, so only Harry is coming for services. You would only check off Harry, enter a start date for his client record, and obviously it defaults to the day you're entering the information, but you can simply click on the calendar and change the date or type in the date. You can tab through the fields and then you'd hit save. This workflow goes through assessments, so we're going to go through these assessments. Not every shelter enters assessments. The typical assessments are the universal data assessment, barriers, income and DV assessment. There may be some shelters that use this work group that do not record that information. But for now, just to cover everything, we're going to go through all of them. Disabling the condition, it used to be in the basic client information form, and now they have moved it to the universal data assessment. Same questions, same responses, is just to move location. So now instead of recording the disabling condition one time for across the board, we're asking for the disabling condition at every project entry and exit. So you'd still answer the question. We're tying it now to the entry assessment, not to the basic client information. So it's no longer an actual demographic of the client. Type of residence, you still have the same, the wordings of a couple of responses have changed. Like for example, this one, rental by client with other housing subsidy. It used to just read that. It didn't have including RRH, which stands for rapid rehousing. So they kind of just changed that. And there isn't one other that they kind of just changed the wording. I think it was this one. They included in parentheses other than rapid rehousing. Everything else has remained the same. So we're going to select an option here. These questions here under the living situation do use conditional logic. So depending on one, the type of project you're enrolling your client into, and two, the type of residence that the client is coming from. So depending on your selection here, you'll get additional questions. Like so, for example, if the client was coming from a permanent supportive housing situation and they were there for longer than a year, actually maybe this is just, let's see, didn't change anything. But upon entry of an emergency shelter project, we're assuming that they are homeless at that moment. So we'll go ahead and keep going. You can type in the date here or click on the calendar. The arrows here, the double arrow means you'd go back 1 year. The single arrow, you would go back 1 month. And then the same for the right side. You'd go forward 1 month or you would go forward an entire year. So we'll go back an entire year because I chose 1 year or longer. Enter how many times they were homeless in the last 3 years. So this is the episodes of homelessness. And then the total number of months. So if I indicated 2 times here, we're assuming that this instance, well, I didn't select a homeless shelter or homeless situation, but we're assuming that within the 2 times, we would have to kind of inquire about how long they were homeless those 2 times, and then we would go ahead and select the number of months. So within the 2 times that this client has been homeless, what's the sum of the number of months that they've been homeless? So say the first episode they were homeless for 3 months, and then the second episode they were homeless for another 3 months, and we would select 6. And then insurance is the last question on the universal data assessment. It stayed the same, yes or no. If you select yes, you will be required to select the type of insurance. And I do want to mention that Medicaid sometimes is confused for Medicare, but Medicaid is the Medi-Cal, what we call Medicaid here in California. So I just wanted to point that out. So you would just select the type and then hit save. Okay, barriers has changed this, or I'm sorry, has remained the same, but they have added another component to it. So if they had I'm working with a new client, but if this client was an existing client, it would show you the previous barrier information here. So same thing, if you click the top box, it checks them all off. So, excuse me. So you check them all off, and then you would only change the barrier status to the barriers that they do have. I don't recall what I recorded for disabling condition, but it should match. So if the client has a disabling condition, then obviously they're going to have a barrier. If you selected no for disabling condition, then more than likely they will have no barriers. Another change is that they dropped 2 questions. So if the client did have an actual barrier and select yes, the only additional question you would need to record is if the condition is indefinite. So yes or no, or don't know, refused, or data not collected. Prior to this, we had, I think, receiving services and documentation on file. Those two questions are no longer required. So you would hit save and close. And then the second to last assessment is domestic violence experience. No changes here. You select yes, you get the 2 additional questions when the experience occurred, and if they're currently fleeing domestic violence. If it's a no, those 2 questions are not required, obviously. Last assessment is income. Obviously, if you select yes, you would be expected to record the type and the amount, and they only appear, the table of the type of income and the benefits only appear if you select yes for income from any source and non-cash benefits from any source. So if you select income, you would check off, the system would expect you to check off something from this list, and then if you select yes for non-cash benefits, it would expect you to select something from this list. If you do not, it will give you an alert. 2 changes here is that they have retired these 2 options under non-cash benefits, the Section 8 and the temporary rental assistance. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the most common, food stamps, and then let's go with earned income, and then you enter the amount here. And if you need some more clarification on how to count income or how to record it, you do have these paragraphs here that kind of go into detail. So we go ahead and save and close that. Okay, and we have finished the workflow. And it brings you back to your client's dashboard. A couple of things that I wanted to add or to mention is that this here is the client toolbar. So whichever client you're working with, that client's name would appear here. You have a little bit of their demographics, you have their date of birth. This would be their client ID number. It's a low number here because it's our training site, but if it's like 20,126, it would show there. Their gender, if there's any notifications tied to this client, and you can add notifications to your clients. And then if you hit this icon, you could see all of their family members. So if the client had family members, they would all be listed here. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and look at the menu navigation. We just went through the shelter intake, which is the workflow. We also have the coordinated intake. So if you're not enrolling the client into your project, but the client needs to be or would like to be on the housing priority list, this is how you would enter the information. So you would go through the coordinated intake, which is a shortened version of the shelter intake. The coordinated intake does not go through barriers, income, DV, or barriers, income, or DV assessments. It only goes through the universal data assessments. Same process, you would go through the workflow. You would add the client or use a current client, which is the client you have up on your toolbar, or you can always select another client. I won't go through the workflow because it's exactly the same as the one we just went through, but without the assessments. From there, you would click on the VI SPDAT. You would add a new VI SPDAT. This is a single VI SPDAT, and then you would add a family VI SPDAT if it's a household. I've added the housing notes button here, so instead of going through look for the housing notes down here or down, actually it should be down here, the VI SPDAT housing notes, it's just a quick button there. And you would click add new, and you would go straight into the housing note. You would also want to add a client photo. Once they're on the housing priority list and they do come up for housing, it's the easiest way to find them is to identify them through their picture. I also want to, so all you have to do to add their photo is click on client photo, upload the file by clicking choose file, which is a file that you already have on your desktop, or I'm sorry, on your computer. Save that, and the picture will come up. So this box here, everything above this line is considered your favorites. You can add to your favorites. So say, for example, services. You do services every single day, and you don't want to have to go through the whole menu options to search for it. Everything with the star here on the form. So this is the form, this whole thing here. If you have a star here, you can simply click on it, which will create a favorites shortcut. You can change the picture of the icon. This is a service, for example, and you can rename this to whatever you want. I can be specific. According to this, my name is Kelly Clarkson, so I'm going to put Kelly's Services. And then I could put dailies or something like that to remind me. I can create containers, which means that this is a container. So if you hover over this, you get additional options. So you could bucket things. And as you could see, it added it here. So now instead of, let me cancel out of this. Instead of having to go through the whole menu options, I can simply click on this and it'll take me straight to the client services page. If it's yellowed, it means that you've already You've already created it as a favorite. You can always remove it by right-clicking on it, on the name. You can click remove, or you can manage it to drop it in a new container, or properties to change the icon or relabel it. Go ahead and remove that. Let's see. So on the client's dashboard, in order to exit a client, you have a couple options. You can go to enrollments, which will take you to the enrollments page. And then on the action gear next to the enrollment, you would click on that and you have the option to exit the enrollment. You also have the option to edit the enrollment. And then you also have the option to review entry assessments, view case members, add family members. And this is off the enrollment. You can get to that right off of the dashboard. So right here in the middle where it's listing all the enrollments, you can click on that action gear and you'd get the same options. Edit the enrollment, it's going to take you through the entire thing, and you can change things through there. That way you can keep everything that is there, but it would take you through all the assessments. You can add family members by clicking on the Add Family Members page. So say, for example, that the client came in and then maybe a month later the child came and stayed with the head of household. You can always add family members there. Let me go cancel this. So this enrollment has obviously one case member. You have their entry date. If the client has already exited, you'll see an exit date, the organization, and then the last time they completed an assessment. If the case had more than one member, you could click on View Case Members, and then they would be all listed here. You can edit the enrollment here by clicking on that icon. If this is blank, that means there's no assessment tied to the enrollment. I know that sometimes we send out snapshot reports and we indicate that there's a lot of information missing, and you may think to yourself, well, I know they're there, I added them like even 10 times, but we're not showing them on our end because we're just running the reports, and the reports don't show any assessments tied to it, and this is the reason. The enrollment has to be tied to a master assessment, and then that master assessment has to be tied to all the individual assessments. So it's kind of like an umbrella thing. We have the enrollment, the master assessment, and then the individual assessments, which are the universal assessment, income assessment, barriers, and DV for the majority of you. So if there were no date here, all you would have to do is click on this magnifying glass next to that field. If nothing comes up here, it's because you have to click on this search button. Once you click on that search button, then it will come up. It won't automatically come up. You would find the one that should be linked, and then you can go ahead and save it. If nothing is available, because there were no assessments completed, no master assessments, you can click Add New. We're going to keep that one there. Okay. And next, where am I? Go back to enrollments here. I also want to show, sometimes you may or may not know which assessments are tied to the master assessment and the enrollment and which ones are not. So to review all the assessments, the individual assessments, you can click on the action gear and select Review Entry Assessments. If the client has exited, you'll also have an option that reads Review Exit Assessments. Okay. Everything that's checked off means that it's been completed, but you can also edit them here. So say, for example, the snapshot report that we sent out for the previous month indicates that their living situation was missing. You'd kind of have to think back, where does that living situation, where is it captured? And in this case, it's captured in the universal data assessment. So you can edit that single assessment without having to go through the entire workflow by clicking here. So you can edit the universal data data assessment, make the change, and then save. Same with the additional assessments. So if we mentioned that the client has all the assessments but doesn't have barriers, when you get to this page, more than likely they'll all be checked off except for the barriers. So all you would have to do is click on the edit icon and add all the assessments and save and close. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and go through the exit. So this is a workflow. Every time you're in a workflow, you'll have the steps right here. You don't, as you could see, these kind of grayed out. So whenever you're in a workflow, there's some things that you won't be able to do until you finish the workflow or cancel out of the workflow. Like as you can see, the find client is also grayed out. So while you're in a workflow, like I said, you won't be able to go and find another client. Okay, so for the exit, you're going to enter the exit date, select the destination. Hopefully it's a stable housing destination. Record any services if you want to tie any services to the end of the client's stay. This box here is for your case assignments. If it's not checked, it will not automatically remove them from your caseload. You can go ahead, it defaults to this, but if you don't want to remove them from your caseload, say you're going to provide follow-up and you want them to stay on your caseload, then uncheck this box. So you need to go ahead and click Save. It's going to take you through the exit assessments, which for the universal, it's just your insurance information. It's going to take you through barriers, and as you could see, it keeps the barriers a client already has. You can also see their previous barriers. Go ahead and save and close. You're going to update their income upon exit. Hopefully they've improved their income, and I think in this case they're decreasing their income. And if the client had additional family members, it will ask you if you want to exit every client. So if you do want to exit all clients, then you would just keep going until you've gone through all the clients, done all the assessments for all the clients, and then eventually you'd get to the finish page. So now here on the dashboard, you see that this client already has an exit date, their enrollment, their start date, and their exit date. Okay. If your agency records services, you can click on services. You have the option to add one at a time, or quick services, which is multiple services for the client at a time. So you can track client services on a daily basis, weekly basis, or monthly basis. You would enter the date, select the program, and then check off all the services that the client received. And then you can change their their units. So say you record them on a monthly basis, you don't have to record all 20 counseling services they received and all 20 separately. You can just simply change that to 20 and then save. The unit value is only applicable if you're counting the value of each service. So say for a particular grant, you need to know how much all the services cost for your project, then you would track the unit value. If not, it will default more than likely to 1. But if that is the case, please let me know and I will change the value to any particular service. That way, when you do calculate or run reports for your services, there's a value attached to the services you're providing. Okay. And I think case notes was the last thing I wanted to cover. If you are a case manager, more than likely you would want to attach case notes to the client. You would click on case notes here. You can always add it to your favorites by clicking the yellow star here, the white star here. Click add new case note. Let me add a test one here. And then all the case notes would be listed here. So when you go ahead and add a case note, you are required to add a title per se. There is note types which you can kind of you may or may not want to use, and then you can actually copy paste or you can type your case note. I don't know. And then save that. You can restrict to a read-only. So case notes are restricted to organizations. So that means that only employees within your organization have access to the case notes. No other end user from any other organization will be able to read any case notes for the client, even if the client has hopped over to their shelter. Let's go ahead and save. And then what I like about the case notes is that if you select this button here, you can sort through that. You can use these filters to sort by the title of the case notes or maybe the user of the case notes. But if you click this box here and then click on print selected, you get this page opens up where you can quickly read through all the case notes without having to go and edit and read them one at a time. You can print this. We just ask that you do keep it safe out of the hands of anyone that shouldn't be reading these, maybe shred at the end or lock up. But you don't necessarily have to print it. If you can just go ahead and run through it, kind of just to get a picture or an idea of what's going on with the client, especially if you haven't met with them and there's additional case managers that are working with the client. So I'll go ahead and cancel that. Okay, so at the beginning I did go over how to check in clients using the quick client shelter check-in. However, there is an additional way to check in clients. You can go over to the shelter workspace, and then let me find my facility. You can also do a batch check-in. So this is checking in one client at a time. So you would enter the client ID number. Their enrollment will automatically come up. If the enrollment is not listed here, that means that the client doesn't have an open enrollment within this time frame. So you can simply just click on Add Enrollment, and it'll take you to the client's workspace, and it'll take you through the workflow. Let me go ahead and cancel this and jump back over to the shelter tab. However, if the client already did have an enrollment, all you would need to do is check in the dates that the client is actually staying at your shelter. It could be one day, it could be a whole week. We would just ask that you keep it within the month. So don't overlap from say August 10th through September 10th, because then when we run reports, the system doesn't necessarily know how to count that. So like I said, just within the same month. If the client stayed the entire month, every single day, you can select September 1st through September 30th, or like I said, you can do one day at a time. and the check-in dates do have to be within the enrollment date. So for example, this client was enrolled into this project as of September 24th. If you change that before, you don't get an enrollment option. The check-in date has to be within the enrollment time frame. So let me change that back and see, now you have your enrollment. You select the room, anything else, everything that has a red asterisk is required and needs to be recorded in order to be able to move forward. If it doesn't have a red asterisk, you can leave it blank. Go ahead and save. Okay, and so that client has been checked in, and then you can move on to the next client and so on. To review your residents, you can simply click on current residents, and then you'll get a list of the clients that have been checked into your shelter by date. So you can select the date. I don't know if there's any here in the test site, but as you change the dates, you'll see which clients were enrolled or checked in during that day. Okay, go ahead and cancel that. There's a couple other menu options, but for sake of time, I'm not going to go over everything. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover here in the homeless site. Before we jump over to the DV site, are there any questions in regards to what I've already covered? Miriam, have you seen any questions?
No, there hasn't been any questions in the chat, but just a reminder, everyone, if you do have questions, you can place them in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and sign out of this one, and then I'm going to quickly go over to the DV site. And I'm also only going to go through the training site. It's a different URL, so if you have the need to enter into a DV database, it is a separate username and password, and you would need to have access to both. Okay. The database looks exactly the same. Go ahead and close that. It also defaults straight into your client's dashboard. You have the exact same shelter intake. The only thing that the DV system does not have compared to the homeless database is the coordinated assessment. We ask that if your client is DV, you record their coordinated assessment, their VI-SPDAT, and their enrollment in the homeless site. However, you would enter it as an anonymous client, and in the housing notes, please indicate the client ID number as it pertains to their DV record. That way we can identify the client. But the intake workflow works exactly the same way as I covered in the previous database. So for sake of time, again, I won't go through the entire workflow. The only other difference on the DV site, if you do record indirect services or if you do record surveys, these are options that the homeless database does not have, just to meet grant-related activity. So for indirect services, what that means is that you're recording services that are not tied to a specific client. So you want to record the instance of a service, but it's not necessarily tied to a client. So you would click on indirect services. You can click add new. You would select, these are two options. They're not the only options, but they're the most common. You would select your hotline calls. And again, you can track this on a daily basis, weekly basis, or monthly basis, as long as it's within the same month. So say, for example, you track your hotline calls for your DV shelter on a monthly basis. Just select any day of that month, so it can be tied to this month. You would record your units. Let's say we got 500 calls in the month of September. You can add comments if you'd like. You'd save that, and then you have all your indirect services listed here. Again, these services are not tied to clients. You're just recording what's going on outside of your client activity. Sometimes I know that there's shelters that track how many meals they provide, and they can track them separately or all together. They can track breakfast separately, lunch, and dinner, or they can track them all together, and then they would just add that here. And then we also have the surveys. So there are a couple projects that record surveys, and they're very specific surveys. So you can click Add New here. You have the ability to create your own surveys, specific or customized to your need. So I would go here, Test. You would give it access to your own organization. You would only have your organization listed there. And then you would want to set up your questions. So actually, I'm going to go back to the one that has been created. This is the pet-friendly survey that I created just for testing this. So to complete a survey, you would go to View Completed Surveys, and then you'd go to Complete a Survey. You can attach it to a specific client, or you can keep the survey anonymous by just clicking this button. So you would select the survey date, the type, is it at entry, during program enrollment, at exit, etc. And then you would obviously attach it to your program. And then you can hit this magnifying glass here to select a client. Okay, I guess the only client that I have under Barbara Seville is Lucy Aguilar. So I would select that, and then you would go ahead and enter the responses for this client survey. So do you have a dog? Yes or no. And you also can customize your responses, so it doesn't have to be a yes or no necessarily. Do you have a cat? And then you go ahead and save. And so all your surveys would be listed here. That's if you need to link them to every client. And then the way I set up this survey is you get if you indicated yes, you get a score of 1. If you indicate no, you'd get a score of 2. So this is our survey. Other than that, the work groups are the same. You can still access all your reports through the home workspace. All the client activity could be found on the client's workspace. You have your assessments. Same exact thing. You can review your entry assessments there. It looks exactly the same. And you can review your exit assessments the same way. The only thing I didn't cover in the previous database is the global search. You can indicate, or you can search for clients, you can search for reports, you can search for assessments through the global search. So for example, if I know I need to pull up a universal assessment or maybe add a universal assessment, I can simply type in the word universal, hit enter, and everything that matches that would come up here. So it doesn't necessarily have to be specific to a client. This is the client's workspace. So this is the universal assessment setter that the global search has found. If it was found in the home workspace, it would list it as home. I think there's a Brittany in here. No, maybe not. Oops. What else is there? Financial. I can't remember names of clients that have entered here. Let's try Lucy. Let's try her last name. Okay, we found Lucy. You can enter client ID numbers. I can't remember. Let's try 15 because I could see this client is 15. Okay, maybe not. It should come up. I've seen it work before. I'm not sure why it's not reading it. Let's try 14. Okay, that is weird. Okay, so that's working. Nope, it's not working no more either. That's really weird. I'm sorry about that, but it has worked in the past. I'll look into that. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover So now we can open it up for questions. Miriam, is there any questions?
No, nobody's asked any questions, but just a reminder, if you do have any questions or think of any questions, you can always email either Lucia or myself. Also, if you would like a copy of today's recording, let us know. Just if you guys have any questions, just make sure to put them in the chat box.
Okay. And if you have specific requests for different types of trainings, please let us know as well. We'll just wait a few more moments in case someone's trying to add a question, and maybe the question's really long.
Oh, wait, I see it. So I have Jennifer Lopez. I don't know if you can read it, Lucia. It says, just to clarify, the survey part for the DV part, we could create our own survey and they would just be seen by our program/agency. And then it says, we have a couple of surveys regarding safety planning that we do on paper, but if I understand this right, I could track these also in HMIS.
Yes, so you can track it a couple of different ways depending on what information you need. I know that there's another agency that tracks surveys in regards to like workshops or classes that they offer, and they have the answers or responses to those are like if they learned more about I think it's safety too after the class, like the resource outcome or something like that. I think it's specific to Cal OES. But yes, they would be only seen by your organization depending, let me go back here. So when you create a new survey, you would only have, I have access to all of these organizations, that's why they're listed here. But when you create your organization, your survey, only your agency would be listed here. So you would only check off your organization name, and this is the accessing organization. So it would only be available to your HMIS user under your organization. But please contact me. I can help you set that up. And if this is not really, if this is, you need to record or track surveys, but this is not really working, maybe we can brainstorm and find a better way.
Okay, and then we have CSET asking another question. It says, how would we go about getting the separate username and password to enter DV info? Or are we supposed to just refer them to a DV shelter for entry? Also, I would like a copy for the recording when you're available. Yeah, so that's their question.
Okay, the DV database is only specifically for agencies that have a DV project. We wouldn't necessarily give username and passwords to HMIS users that do not have a DV project because the confidentiality and the, what is it called? I think it's VAWA. We have to keep them separate and not in the regular homeless database. So if you're not a DV provider, I don't believe we can give you access to this database. It's specific to the agencies that provide a DV project. I don't see the question, but I'm hoping that that's what they meant.
And then CSET said again, so if we are conducting a VASPADAT and they indicate that they are a DV victim, what is the process?
Yes, you would have to refer them to a DV project. So the DV shelters in the Bi-County region are the Barbara Seville Women's Shelter in Kings County, Karen's House at Family Services, that's in Visalia, and the CCFC Emergency Shelter in Porterville. Those are our 3 DV providers for emergency shelter. So the plan is, and it's also in the coordinated entry manual, the process would be referring them to one of those agencies.
Okay, and then CSET said, got it. Thank you for the information.
Sure, and if it's a client that is a DV victim, but they don't want to go to a DV shelter, you can still complete a VI-SPDAT assessment, but just make sure that you let them know that they still have to sign consent and they would participate in HMIS, and so you can still enter them into the homeless database upon their consent.
Thank you, Lucia.
Yeah, the only reason why we would want that to keep them or to refer them to a DV provider is so we can keep their information confidential, especially if they're fleeing domestic violence. Any other questions? Okay, well, I think that's going to be all for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And if you have other questions specific to your agency or program, always feel free to contact either myself or Miriam. You can either email us or call us here at the office. The phone number is 559-584-1536. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a good day.
Thank you.